English language learners are one of the fastest growing student groups in Texas. Texas has the second highest percentage of English learner students in the United States. Almost 1 million Texas K-12 students were classified as English language learners during the 2015-16 school year. In Texas, Hispanic English learner students comprise nearly 90% of English learner students. Research has shown these students lag behind their peers from other backgrounds in high school graduation and post-secondary attainment. Texas stakeholders have made it a priority to gain a better understanding of the long-term achievement of English learner students. REL Southwest Texas English Learners Research Alliance, consisting of Texas educators, policymakers, and research and support specialists from REL Southwest, sought to gain a better understanding of the long-term achievement of Hispanic English learner students in Texas.
So the Alliance was really interested in long-term outcomes for English learner students to really understand the whole trajectory of the students' language development.
So the Austin Independent School District has been involved with the Alliance for several years. When I came into this role a couple years ago, I was pleased to see that we had this partnership and this alliance because of the importance that we place on collaborating across districts and having a network of people doing similar work to us.
So it is important to understand, because the English learner subgroup is such a diverse, heterogeneous population, not all ELs will meet the same educational milestones at the same time. And by those milestones in this study, we're talking about attainment of English proficiency and meeting reading and math standards. We were also interested in understanding not only how the students how long it takes the students to attain proficiency across the entire cohort, but also how some of the factors such as students' education experiences, demographic characteristics, and district characteristics shape those trajectories. We followed a cohort of Hispanic English learners who entered the Texas public schools in grade 1, and we followed them in the data system from grade 1 until grade 8. So we found that the average student, English learner student, attains proficiency by really the middle of grade 4. There were a couple of key findings that emerged. We found that there were several student subgroups that were more at risk of not attaining these outcomes by grade 8. Students that began school at an intermediate or above level of English proficiency were about 2.8, almost 3 times more likely to attain proficiency by grade 8 compared to their peers who entered school as beginners on the English proficiency assessment. Another important factor was special education status. So whether a student had ever been enrolled in a special education program also was a risk factor for students. So those that were not enrolled in special education were about 3 times more likely to attain English proficiency compared to their peers who were what we call dual identified, students that received both English learner services and special education services. And then a third factor that really emerged as shaping students' trajectories was the age of a student at entry into school in first grade. So we found that essentially students who were older than 7 were about half as likely to attain proficiency than their peers who entered grade 1 at the age you might expect. So that has implications for instruction because educational leaders should be thinking about which English learner students are at most risk of not attaining these benchmarks and should be thinking about targeting supports to those students who need them the most.
No two English language learners are the same. They bring with them their native language proficiency, their second language proficiency, they bring with them their socioeconomic status. You know, none of us can ever leave that behind, right? They also bring any special needs that they have, of course their age. I've even seen that impact of having older siblings has on students. The results, the outcome of the study really helps us to have a lens on how to be able to get that done.
And for me, I would use this research to really understand better what's the timeline that we can expect for our students, and what are some of the supports and the interventions that we can put in place when students aren't meeting those timelines. There's variation, obviously, in how long it takes students to achieve these goals, but we need to really understand, like, what are some reasonable expectations and what are some benchmarks along the way that we can use to figure out if a student is on track or if they might need some additional supports. I think students and educators in Texas would benefit from this work because it really can shape the instructional programs and supports that we're providing to the schools and the students that they serve.
I think that Texas, us working together, not only the school districts, but with REL Southwest, can truly impact what we do for students.
This research demonstrates that it takes time to acquire English, and some students may need more intensive or longer-term supports than others. Recognize that it takes more time on average for some student groups to reach English proficiency. Consider designing targeted supports and interventions to support these populations.